Alright everyone, Lord Ryujin is here again. Um, Probably going to be one of a few videos that I'm going to do today. Not really too sure. But I don't know if you really want to call this video defending Nintendo, because it's really defending all console hardware to an extent. And in this video, I kind of just wanted to clear some things up because I've had some people that have been like, "Oh, did you hear that Nintendo's working on new hardware?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, so they finally realized that Wii U just wasn't successful, and they're finally learning the lesson. And it's like, okay, first of all, enough of that. I'm even reading these articles that talk about, oh, the new 3DS is what Nintendo should have released with to begin with. Okay, fair enough, I guess, but you do realize that the Wii was in development like a year after the GameCube came out. So because Nintendo is working on the new hardware doesn't mean that we're going to see it anytime soon. In fact, it might be another 4 or 5 years before they decide to even reveal, because the technology and what they want to do with it advances to a point to where they feel comfortable with releasing it. So simply because they're working on new hardware doesn't mean anything. But more to the point, I'm tired of hearing this stuff about, oh, this is what the system should have been. And this might be difficult for me to get across, but you do realize that no one can predict the future, right? I mean, technically the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One are already out of date in comparison to what a computer is capable of doing, and they're already technically out of date with what a tablet will probably be able to do within the next few years. So does that mean that we now suddenly just need to abandon the PlayStation 4 even though it hasn't even been out for 2 years yet and just go on to the PlayStation 5? No. We just deal with it. I mean, when a game system is developed, the developer has a certain idea, you know? Because when the 3DS came out, 3D was the next big thing. And they really probably thought that that was going to pick up, and they took a chance with it. And it didn't pick up nearly as much as they thought that it would, but to me, the 3D adds the depth and it adds the realism. It makes the system look like it's a high-definition kind of system. But at the same time, Sony comes out with the PlayStation Vita, and it's this high-tech, really advanced piece of hardware, and it's barely selling, and they're not even releasing games for it, like they've given up on it. Because, again, I guess Sony thought that the advanced hardware was going to be their saving grace. Even the Xbox One had this whole idea of using the Kinect and DRM, and we all know what happened with that and how quickly they abandoned the DRM, and you know, now they're giving up on the Kinect and everything, because that was their idea of what the hardware should have been. That was their idea of what the future was going to be. And then they had to abandon it. Now the Xbox One isn't really holding up to its capabilities. When they released the Wii U, people tend to forget that it was state-of-the-art. And Nintendo had no idea what Sony and Microsoft were going to come out with. They hadn't even announced new hardware yet. And I sort of talked about this when the Wii U first came out, or right before it came out. But there was a lot of people within the industry that was talking about there's not going to be that much of an advance. Technology is pretty much going to be right around the same. And if you ask me, there isn't really much of a difference between the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4. There isn't really much of a difference between the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, because if there was, we would see the difference in the games. But if you go look at Watch Dogs on the 360 and on the Xbox One, they look pretty much the same. I really don't think that there's that much. There might be, you know, effects here and there, shadowing and all that stuff that really does make the system look better, and it might even run smoother. But if developers are already having problems with the consoles running at what they're supposed to be running at, from what I understand, where they're supposed to be able to do 1080p, which I do agree with that. I don't really care about the definition, and I don't really care about the frame rates per second, but I've already stated before that if the previous generation of games could do 720, it seems to me that, anything, even 900p, is an advancement. But I do understand why people were expecting 1080p, because there were some games that came out last generation with the 360 and the PS3 that did run at 720p, and a lot that even ran at 1080. But I find it interesting that people are dissing the Wii U so much, and it's just like, that's funny, because the Wii U has a lot of games that run at 1080p 60 frames per second. Does your Xbox One do that? No, it doesn't. At least not across the board, and neither does the Wii U. So like I said, kind of across the board here, Sony, Microsoft, and even Nintendo, they all have kind of their faults going, but they all have their own uniqueness to them as well, which is the reason why I'm not judging them. I'm going to pick up all three consoles. I'm going to play something on all three. I'm already working on a list of what I want to get for the Xbox One, and I'm already working on a list of games that I want to get for the PlayStation 4. So I'm going to play both of them because I'm a collector and I like the hardware. I don't instantly put it on this pedestal. It's like, it's got to be the best system. Like, no. If it was the best system that came out, it would be like a $2,000 piece of hardware. No one would buy it. They had to cut costs to make it affordable for the common consumer. I get it. Oh. I guess I'm just getting tired of hearing this stuff. Like, you do realize that when the 3DS came out, it was technologically advanced. And I even remember thinking, okay, so they finally caught up with what the PSP was doing. Because up until the Vita came out, the idea of having a portable system that did dual sticks, no one really thought it was going to happen. And then it happened. And now the new 3DS has a second stick, kinda. But I wouldn't be surprised if the next generation portable that Nintendo comes out with, if it drops the sickle pads altogether and maybe favors analog sticks. I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm going to go into another video. That's neither here nor there. I'm just saying that when something comes out, there's no telling what the future is going to hold. I mean, do you really think that Sony intended to release the PlayStation Vita and then drop support for it? Do you really think that they meant that? Or do you really think that they meant to come out with a God of War and really show off, come out with more than just an Uncharted game? Do you really think that they really were not planning to release AAA titles for it? Of course they were. But other stuff came along. The whole deal with the 3G AT&T partnership, yeah, that went out the window because 4G came out. Do you really think that Sony was sitting there going, 4G is going to come out in the next 3 years. We really need to... They don't know. Go back and look at something like the Nokia N-Gage, for example, which was the very first smartphone. It was a phone that was capable of playing games. And they thought that was a good idea. No one, at least no one in their right mind, is releasing a system saying this thing is going to be utterly doomed from the beginning. We know it. And we're going to put it out on the market anyway, knowing that no one's going to buy it, that there's no way this thing's going to pick up any steam, and we're going to overprice it on purpose. No one does that. When the Wii U came out, it was technologically advanced. It was the most advanced system out on the market. They had no idea what Microsoft and Sony were going to do, because even I, doing research into it, was finding studies and analysts that were saying that technology has not advanced that much, so the PlayStation 4 and the next Xbox, they shouldn't be that advanced. So technically the Wii U and the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, they should all be on equal grounds, but they're not. They're not. They're not even on equal grounds of what a PC can do. And they haven't been out that long. So you really think that, oh, well, the new 3DS is what Nintendo should have released from the beginning? I don't agree with that. When Nintendo released the 3DS, I remember looking at it and thinking, this is what portable gaming needs to be. And I kind of remember looking in a way at the Vita and thinking, yeah, it's a nice piece of hardware, but it looks like it's kind of overkill. I don't see how they're going to really keep this thing going. Because they're talking about it's going to do this, it's going to do that, and I don't know. I still want to get my hands on a Vita to really try it and really kind of get a feel for it, but just based upon what I've seen of it, based upon holding it in my hands and just seeing how certain games work, it really seems like the thing with portable gaming that people need to remember is that it's portable. There's a reason why games like Super Mario 3D Land and Animal Crossing and stuff like that, why they're really popular games, because they're pick up and go games. You got 30 minutes to kill on a train station, on your way to work, play a little bit of Animal Crossing, do a couple of levels of Super Mario 3D Land, and put it in your pocket. The Vita was designed to be a home console experience where you had to sit down for a long period of time, and most people, if they're going to do that, they're going to do that at home, and they might as well plug it into a TV anyway. That's why one of the Vita's missing features was the ability to run it through the TV. And this is why this whole PlayStation TV thing probably going to work out for the best, because then the games that they wanted to have the long-term, at-home experience, they're probably going to play it at home. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just trying to defend the hardware, not just Nintendo, although more so Nintendo. So I think people give Nintendo a lot more hell than what they need to do. But you have to remember, that's always been Nintendo's thing. The Wii was underpowered, but yet it was the best-selling system. It had the best games on it, if you ask me. The GameCube was Nintendo's attempt at creating a powerful system that could keep up with the competition, but no one bought it. The 64, they certainly did not try. They really thought that cartridges were going to be the way of the future. In a way, I kind of agree with them. I still kind of think you can hold more data on a cartridge, especially if you figure out how to do it. Because, again, I've already talked about Resident Evil Revelations. It's on a cartridge this big, and it's able to hold quite a bit of information. It really just depends upon the developer and their laziness, really. But again, that's neither here nor there. I'm just saying that when Nintendo released the 64, they planned for the 64 DD to come with it. They really thought that was going to be, the internet was going to be the future, and it just didn't work out. That's just how it is. No one, I'm sure not even Sony, and Sony's riding high on the PlayStation 4, even though they are losing more money than Nintendo is, really. And Microsoft, let's not even talk into how much money they're losing off the Xbox brand. Every single company, all three of them, are slowly being bled dry from their consoles. And we want to sit here and talk smack about them. And it's like, yeah, that's real smart. Let's talk smack about the people that give us home console gaming. And let's piss them off to where they decide, you know what, we're done. No PlayStation 5, no Xbox 2 or whatever, nothing. Let's go ahead and do that. See how quickly you start crying about, we miss you, come back. Or people would just jump to PC. But that's just me. All I'm saying, people, is just appreciate what you have. I remember, and again, this is probably just me being an old school gamer. And, a retro gamer and all that. But I remember back when games were appreciated, I remember somebody bringing in a Sega Saturn, and they were playing, some kind of an RPG game. And I wasn't even into RPGs at the time, and I'm still watching. I'm like, you know what, that is pretty neat tech. I remember seeing the Sega Saturn, and I was like, that's pretty neat tech. I like how it puts the cartridges in the back. And it has, you can expand its memory and all this stuff like that, and it was really neat stuff, I didn't really look at it and just, start naming off specs and how this system's better and woo-woo. It was just, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, because I never really cared, even back in, middle school and stuff like that, when people were talking about Genesis this and Super Nintendo that, and I'm just like, if you want to play Sonic, play Genesis. If you want to play Legend of Zelda and Mario and all that, play Super Nintendo. Doesn't really matter. I own both. I'm going to get the Sega CD and the 32X. I'm going to play them. I mean, it is what it is. Let's just enjoy the technology. The PlayStation 4 is already outdated. The Xbox One has been outdated. And the Wii U, we already know, is outdated. But again, when they came out, they were on par. But do you really think that Microsoft and Sony sat there and they realized, you know, our systems are going to be obsolete in 3 years? Technology is growing at an immense rate nowadays. And it's not like it was before, where we had a good chunk of time between technological jumps. Now it's like every single year we have a phone that does something better, a tablet that does better, a webcam that does better, a computer that does better. So I don't mind having a slightly bit of obsoleted technology, because if it means that when I come home with Bayonetta 2 this Friday and I pop it into my Wii U and I have a good time, that's awesome. I'm not going to complain about it running at a certain frame rate and this, that, and the other, and stub my nose and be all snotty about it, and just thinking, PC's better. I'm just going to enjoy the damn game, which is what we should do. That's just me, and that's just my 2 cents, of course. And I know that it's just kind of a random rant. It wasn't really about anything, but I'm just getting tired of this. I'm getting tired of this hate. I'm getting tired of, this elitism thing, because I don't really consider myself to be an elitist because I play Nintendo. I just prefer Nintendo because of the franchises that they have. Their first-party stuff is right up my alley. I always love playing Mario, Metroid. Always gets my heart racing. Zelda, like when they showed that E3 trailer, my heart was just, oh, Nintendo just does it right for me. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to play Bloodborne. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to play Uncharted 4. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to play Destiny. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to play Titanfall. I'm going to get around to them. It's just a matter of time at this point. And I'm not going to hate on any system, because they all do their own thing. They all do something. They all do something right, and they all do something wrong. So if every single system does something right and every single system does something wrong, it seems to me like they're on par. They're all doing the exact same thing. And just like I pointed out already, and many times before, the PlayStation 4 is already obsolete. So if you want to sit there and talk smack about the Wii U and how it's not capable of doing this, not capable of doing that, turn the mirror around and say, well, that also means that the Xbox One's not capable of doing it, and neither is the PlayStation 4. But yet, the PlayStation 4 is supposed to be the system to have this generation. Even though if you ask me, the Wii U really is. But that's a completely different conversation as to why that is. But what are your thoughts on this, people? Do you really think that we'll ever see an end of the bickering? I personally don't. I think that we have a bunch of kids and teenagers that are growing up with this elitist mindset that this is what gaming should be. I've gone back and I watched that video about, teenagers reacting to the NES. I'm just like, that's a classic system. How can you, talk about it like that? That was what technology was back in the day. And I'm sure that 20 years from now, people are going to look back at the PlayStation 4 and think, God, those graphics, man, they stink. They're horrible looking. That controller is archaic. People, you have to grow up in it to understand it, I guess. That's just me. And again, that's just my 2 cents. And I know I've said that before. But share your thoughts on the subject. What do you think? Do you really think that the systems are as grand as they make them out to be? Because I just see them as just pieces of technology. I pop in a game and I play it and I enjoy it for what it is. I don't sit here and I try to make a big deal about, oh, it's not running at 1080p, 60 frames per second. Yeah, I get that. 60 frames per second is smooth like butter, but as long as I'm able to play the game, it's not glitching out and bugging out and freezing on me, I'm cool with it. But that's just my 2 cents. Make sure you share yours. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.